Welcome to Just Minding My Business. I hope you're having an amazing day. Today, I am so happy to bring to you a true authority on talent strategy joining us. Please welcome Mike Matalone, an award winning speaker and the nationally recognized expert behind XP3 Talent System. As the founder and chief talent officer of XP3, Mike is a highly sought after trainer, workshop leader, and keynote speaker. Many of you will also know him as the author of the Amazon best-selling book, Hire, Train, Retain. Master the art and science of building high-performing teams that drive organizational success, now in its second edition. We are so thrilled to have him share his insights with us today. So welcome, Mike.
Thank you, Ida. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely great to have you. It has been um I've been looking forward to this all week after I went and read everything. I was like, oh God, this is going to be exciting.
I'll do my best not to let you down.
No, I'm sure you won't. Okay, let's talk about to grow your company successfully and why it's important that you focus on growing your people.
All right. You want to start with that one?
Yes.
All right. So I learned a long time ago, Ida, that the ceiling of your business is dictated by the capabilities of your people, right? And if you're a small entrepreneur just getting started, the realization that you probably have seen is most entrepreneurs build themselves a job rather than a company. And it's not until you embrace the concept that your growth is completely dependent upon your people and taking that mind shift of whatever it is you happen to do, sell, make, deliver, you're really in the people training and coaching business if you want to be able to scale your company consistently and profitably. So that's the main purpose there.
Yes. And most people understand that if you work in corporate America,
Mhm.
get it. You
Yeah.
truly get it because when there's a toxic culture,
Mhm.
and we all know the people make the culture.
Yep.
So we all know that nothing gets done with a smile. Nothing for sure. So the cost of having a system, let's talk a little bit about that because most companies, they kind of churn on what they know,
hmm
thinking it's going to cost more.
Yeah. It's actually cost more to not have a system, right? So
True.
think of it from that standpoint. Almost all successful companies, and I say most, right? There's exceptions, but most have a system and a process well defined for all areas of their organization. So you probably have a marketing system, you have a sales system, you have a production system, a customer service system. But what I learned years ago is, and this is back when I got the idea to create the XP3 Talent system, is that nobody really has a system for their people. They might have like a hiring system that they use, might even have a training system that they utilize, but even that's rare when they're structured well. But what I never found was a system that connected all the dots through the employee life cycle. So, and the critical importance of understanding how important that connection is. So, for example, when you're hiring, instead of just thinking about what you need right now, right? Look at that candidate also with the assumption of, hey, if I do hire this person, where do I have to focus their training and development to get them to be productive faster and a collaborative member of our team? So the training concept or approach begins in the hiring, right? And then even the retention factor. Most people, if they're thinking about retention at all, don't think about it till it's a problem. And you really need to be thinking about that in your hiring process. And then more importantly, your onboarding is where the initial components of retention are put into place. But again, it starts in hiring. So the importance of systems is critical, but unfortunately, there's not a lot of people systems out there, and that's why I created the XP3 system.
Yes, and that's such an important thing because even if the person doesn't have all of the skill sets,
Right.
what's most important is attitude, you know.
Yeah. Yep. Well, even if they do have the skill set, though, Ida, right? They still have to, even if they work for a competitive company that right down the road doing the same job, they still have to learn your systems and processes,
True.
your tools and resources, right? Your culture. And the faster they learn all those things, the faster they're going to be a productive member of the team.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because everybody has their own way of doing things.
Right. But people just assume, oh, because they did the same job, they came highly recommended, whatever. We don't have to train them, just put them in their desk or whatever, and they're going to start performing. But unfortunately, it doesn't work that way.
No, it does not at all, and never have. Never
No.
have. So tell us how XP3
Mhm.
ex- creates that connection with the people.
Okay. Well, hmm. That how do I put this succinctly? So, so I mean, so the connection, right? If you're looking for that part, so let's take a step back and talk about what's known as discretionary effort and employee engagement, right? Because you have to understand those two components. So, employee engagement is defined as a psychological connection to both the organization, which is centered around your mission, vision, and values, and then to the actual work, the job that they're doing. And it's more focused on the behavioral component, which you said, like it's the attitude, the behaviors. So that means then you have to figure out from that standpoint, what are the required behaviors that it takes to be successful in this role? And so the system we use has about 46 behavioral competencies that we utilize to target for a particular role. Like let's say, for example, a project manager, right? So attention to detail would be one of those competencies. Well, you can learn how to do the details, but that doesn't mean you're going to enjoy doing details, right? And to get that psychological connection, you have to not only make sure they know how to do it, which is the knowledge and skill part, you have to make sure that they want to do it, they enjoy doing those details. Like, I don't know about you, but I'm good with details for maybe an hour or so a day. But then my brain starts getting fuzzy. I get impatient. I'm more of a big picture kind of guy. So if you ask me in an interview, could I do the details? I could convince you all day long that I'm an expert. But if you don't ask me, will I enjoy doing details all day? You're missing a critical piece of the puzzle, right? So that's the connection there. And the way we actually use that is we actually in the assessment tool we have that's part of our system, we say, okay, well, here are the competencies for the job. Here's the candidate's personality profile, and then we look at how closely they match. And the important thing to understand for people with that too, because most people misuse these tools, behavior, personality assessments do not tell you if the person can do the job, right? That's your knowledge and skill. Behavior tells you, are they going to be intrinsically motivated to want to do the work every day? And that's kind of the secret sauce to the consistency. So that's the connection, the psychological connection there. On the company side, um, that part is a connection to the culture, and your culture is grounded in your mission, vision, and values, right? They really define how you operate, what you're focused on achieving, and this goes back to what I mentioned about discretionary effort. So take the company founder, owner, CEO, whoever. Um, they are psychologically connected to their organization because it's their mission, their vision, their core values, right? They are willing to do whatever it takes to help their organization succeed. And that's called discretionary effort. And there's been tons of studies by Gallup, the McKinsey Group, and lots of others that have pointed to this, that the average employee only puts in about 40 to 60% of their capability, which means they have another 40 to 60% that they choose whether or not they're going to put that in, right? So in that example I gave you, that CEO, that owner, founder chooses to put in that effort. Well, you can get your employees to choose to put in that effort as well, but they have to be excited about your vision, like and understand as we achieve that vision for the organization, that means there's growth opportunities for me, right? So the excitement comes back around. They have to be passionate about your mission and what you do so that they look forward to coming to work every single day and helping you accomplish that mission. And then they need to be grounded in your core values and they have to be in sync with theirs because that is how you actually operate and make decisions day to day. So if you can create that connection to your mission, vision, values, which is really your culture, then you can get your employees to tap into that discretionary effort. And the studies have shown you can literally double your company's productivity without adding a single person to the team if you can get your existing employees to tap into that discretionary effort. And that's part of what our system does is works with our clients to show them how to put these pieces together and then how to apply that when you're hiring, training, and retaining people.
That is awesome. That is really awesome.
Cool.
And I like the how everything that you said is so correct. But what if the company doesn't reflect the culture that they're looking for?
Right, right. But and that's a challenge, right? So we have a recruiting division as part of XP3. We also have our flagship program is called Talent Mastery, where we're really teaching people, companies and the leadership teams how to implement the XP3 talent system, which is really about how do you hire, train, and retain better. So even on the recruiting side, uh, we really don't want to work with companies unless they either A, already have that good culture and can define it, or they recognize that, hey, our culture isn't that good and we need to work on it. And then we can help them to do that. But one of the first questions I'll ask people say is, describe your culture to me. And most people can't even do that. So if you can't describe it and it's your organization, right, or you're one of the leaders there, then how's anyone else going to get their head around it? So that's probably the first thing is people need to recognize that just because you might have a mission, vision, and value statement doesn't mean they're effective,
Yeah.
right? Because if your employees, like almost all your employees, if I walked up to them in a hallway and say, "Tell me what your mission, your vision, your values are," if they can't tell me what they are, well, clearly they're not connected because they don't even know what they are. That being said, though, to your point, half the leaders I talk to, sometimes even the CEOs, don't even know, clearly what all our values are. Right?
Yes.
So,
Yes.
so yeah, the importance of understanding how that's created and what that means to your culture, and starting with that initiative to be able to do that, to create that type of culture.
Yes. Yes. That's the really critical thing. And
Yeah.
I think as a CEO, defining that culture for yourself
Hmm.
first,
Yep.
and making sure that you're living it.
Hmm. Lead by example.
Yes. It's so critical in the equation because it's one thing of you reciting, I'm gonna say,
Yeah.
your mission statement and all that stuff, but it's
Yeah.
another thing when you show your employees that you actually live it.
Yeah. Well, I'll give you a great example of that. Just this week, I've interviewed a couple of candidates, and I was asked, why you're looking to leave the current job you're at, or why'd you just leave it? And in several instances, and this comes up a lot, they said, I didn't feel the company had a lot of integrity in how they operated. And
Mm.
then they would go into explanations of examples, and then I go look at the website and I find out that one of their core values is integrity. But yet they're asking their employees to do things that are a complete lack of integrity. So that
Yeah.
happens a lot.
Yes, I'm sure. So since we're talking about culture,
Mhm.
and how important is it that the culture support the sales, production, and profitability goals?
Oh, critical. I mean, it's like I said, your culture is how you actually operate and do things day to day. So again, it's your mission. People got to be passionate about it. So if they're more passionate, they're going to be more productive. They're going to sell more if they're in sales, right? If they're not passionate about it, right, you're going to get the opposite effect. Same thing with the vision. If they're excited about achieving that vision, again, they'll put in that discretionary effort and do what it takes to succeed. But if they're not connected to or excited or even know what the vision is, I mean that's most companies, have a mission statement. Vision statements are a little fuzzier at times. And unfortunately, most employees don't know what leadership is trying to accomplish, right? And where we're trying to get to in the next several years. So now part of that is also the world we live in, right? 15, 20 years ago, people would do strategic plans and plan out what do we get, what's happening in 10 years from now, right?
Right.
In this today's world, who knows what's going to happen next year?
Or tomorrow.
Right. So it's harder to do that, but that means you need to probably adjust, that vision statement that you created 5, 10 years ago. It may not be applicable today. And if you do make those changes, you got to communicate that to everybody and make sure they understand the why behind it and how that's going to help them. So,
Yeah. And that's most important because most people, when you go on a job, you want to feel like you're able to grow
yep.
within
Yep.
this organization. Because,
Well, that's also one of the top reasons people leave jobs. They feel there
yeah,
was no growth opportunities.
yes, you're absolutely right. I've left many because of that. Yes,
Well,
indeed.
that's why I started my own company, became an entrepreneur, because I figured, hey, the best way to make sure I have that future is to create it myself.
Absolutely. Absolutely. For sure. Wow. So if companies want to work with you, how do they connect with you?
Well, you can obviously go to our website, xp3talent.com, to learn more about our services. And it's the number three, XP3. Obviously, they can also want to shoot me a direct email at mike@xp3talent.com. I'm pretty good about replying to people's emails. Those would probably be the top two ways. And then, of course, if they haven't already got a copy of the book, go to Amazon and order a copy of Hire, Train, Retain. One thing I will talk about, because as you mentioned, the first edition came out in 2019. The current version, second edition, just came out a few months ago. And by the way, it's a short read. So I learned a long time ago. I was part of a National Speakers Association meeting I was at, where the guy was talking to a bunch of speakers about writing books, and he said, he goes, I learned a long time ago that people are really good at buying books, but not as good as actually reading them. Right. So he said, how many of you got like more than 3 or 4 books on your shelf that you've ordered this year and you haven't even cracked them open yet? Right. And almost everyone's hand went up. So based on that, I wrote the book to be very concise, to the point, leave out all the fluffy stuff, and just actually make it come almost like a manual to help you to implement the system, just from what you can get out of the book. So the book is probably the first place I would point to people to go, and then if they want to work with us more, obviously reach out after then.
Yeah. So since we're talking about the book, let's tell us a little bit about what people can expect.
Well, yeah. So there are 5 subjects, or chapters in it. The first chapter is we call the foundations for success. So, and some of the stuff you and I were just talking about, right? That discretionary effort, uh, employee engagement. We actually, that's chapter 2. It's all about what is employee engagement, why is it so important, and how do you create it, right? So we start off with that. Then the next final 3 chapters are the third one is talent acquisition, hiring. So how do you implement a very objective and scientific, as well as analytical hiring process so that you can pinpoint where candidates are strong again for your requirements and where they are not, and therefore where do you have to focus on your training and development. So then the fourth chapter is called talent acceleration, and that's really about from the onboarding, getting people, to have an amazing onboarding experience. And reality, the system we teach, right? It actually gets people not just productive in the first 30 days in a measurable form, but it actually is focused on creating collaborative, passionate company advocates, right? So in that chapter, you'll learn about how do you do that, and that's really about tapping into, that discretionary effort. And then, of course, the last chapter is about protecting your investment and all the work and effort you did in hiring and onboarding people. So that's the talent retention piece. And part of we talked about, the lack of growth opportunities. Well, one of the tools that we created in the system is called a career path. So that, and we have templates in and we also have our own web platform too, with all tools of everything that's in the system. So these are some of the tools that'll say, hey, you might start off as a bookkeeper. So what's next? And then maybe it's a bookkeeper two, just or senior bookkeeper, and then maybe a senior staff accountant, then maybe a finance manager. They should always have a path, and then they got to know how to get there, right? And then that's the second part. We created a skill assessment for all these roles. So then that way the employee knows exactly what they have to do to get from where they are to the next stage. But unfortunately, most organizations leave that part out, right? And defining success for your employees is a huge weak component that most managers have. And if you can't define success for your staff, how are they going to achieve it if they don't know? It's kind of like asking them to win a race, but not telling them where the finish line is.
Right.
So in the book, to answer your question, it's going to actually tell you what these tools are and actually how to implement and utilize them to be able to better hire, train, and retain.
Yes. Wow. You laid it all out.
All right. I've done this a couple of times.
Yes, indeed. So you mentioned about data. So
Yep.
how is data and science applied to solve the people challenge?
Yep. So I learned years ago when I first started looking into this that most people hire from their gut, right? I
Mm,
like the person, I don't like the person, right? And what I've learned is that whether you like them or not, it's got nothing to do with their ability to do the job, right? I could be in love with you, but if you can't do the job, I'm going to lose that love quickly, right? So it's really, again, it's we look at and we have formulas for it. That's part of the science and analytics. So we first focus on what are the results that the role has to accomplish, right? Rather than just what are the tasks that keep them busy. So, how does success define? Then that actually helps you to pinpoint the exact level of knowledge and skill that it takes to execute those results, right? So for example, most job descriptions will say, you must be proficient in the Microsoft Office suite. Well, your definition of the word proficient could be completely different than mine, right? And everyone else's. So I might go, yeah, I'm proficient, but not to the standard maybe you wanted me to be, right? So one of the things we do when we assess candidates, we'll say, hey, no, I want you to tell me, are you either a novice, intermediate, or an expert at like Microsoft Excel? I break it, not the suite. I look at just the ones you're going to use. And then, by the way, if you tell me you're an intermediate or an expert, now I need you to tell me why you believe you are. And what I
mhm.
don't want you to tell me is because you've used it for 15 years. Because I don't know about you, but I've been using it ever since it was created, and I'm
Yes.
barely an intermediate. Right? I can create a few formulas. I can create a Gantt chart. Can't do pivot tables. Can't do all formulas. Definitely couldn't teach a class. So that's kind of some of the data and analytics that we start looking at. The science comes into the third component of that success formula, and that's what I talked to you about earlier about figuring out what are the behavioral requirements of the role and then closely aligning those to the candidate. So that's behavioral psychology or psychometric assessments. And that's where the science really comes into play to making sure that your employees are going to be psychologically connected to the organization. And then even how you use that information to communicate better with them, to understand what their intrinsic motivational needs are, how to manage them more effectively, and just collaborate. So there's science that backs up all of it, but every candidate from a hiring process, like even the questionnaires that we send out, they get scored. So you'll know where they're strong, where they're weak in these different areas, and then that helps you to be able to conduct more objective interviews and know where you need to focus your interview questions. So,
Wow.
so
That is
that,
really, really deep.
yeah, yeah. Well, there's more to it, but that's but that's an example of where the science and analytics come in.
Yes, and it's very thorough, in my opinion. It's very, very thorough because I mean, the cost of hiring and losing people
Yes.
is astronomical.
Yep. Yep. As you're probably well aware, it's studies estimate anywhere from a third of the salary to sometimes 150% of the annual salary. The problem is most people don't track what those costs are. You started off talking about, well, what's the cost of a good system? And as I said, what's the cost of not having a system? It's a lot more expensive to
True.
not have it. And most companies don't even realize how much they're actually losing with turnover, right? Or just not having engaged employees or not producing at the level they need to. So, I mean, depending on the size of the organization, it could be, tens of millions. So,
Yeah, and then a lot of the companies, like I'm gonna target the fast food industry.
yep.
They have the highest turnover ever.
That it,
Say,
yep.
the big box stores, you know, and it's like across the board.
Yep.
So
Yep.
why is that? I mean,
Well, because they're usually dealing with entry level people, is one, right, that don't bring a lot of skill sets to the table, which goes back to what I said earlier. Then you have to recognize, right? And even if, take where you said, like, and people say, well, hire for behavior or attitude, and we can train them on everything else, right? Well, can you train them? Really? Do you recognize that you have to train these people? If you're not training them, you're going to have that churn, right? The other thing too is, they're usually you're not talking about a career opportunity, right? So it's like, oh, I need you to, flip burgers or, take money at the cash register. Um, but there's a handful of retail chains like that that actually have understand the concept of career opportunities, right? And they might start you off flipping burgers or whatever, but they actually have you on a track to eventually become a manager of the store. And when you see that, you come to work with a whole different attitude and how you approach stuff, right? Versus I'm just getting, 12 bucks an hour to flip burgers. So that's
Right.
part of that.
Yes, yes, and that's so important having I know that's what I look for when I started a job.
Yep.
I'm starting here, but I have so much more.
Yep.
That's always been my thought.
Right.
Anytime I was in the workforce and started a job. And sometimes it worked, and other times the person or the management
Mhm.
didn't have the right attitude.
Yeah. Well, on that note, Ida, most managers have the attitude like, if it wasn't for all those damn people knocking on my door bothering me all day, being a manager would be great. I'm like, if you've got that attitude, you probably shouldn't be a manager, right?
No.
There's other jobs you could probably do much more effectively, that you're passionate about. But you have to recognize if you're in management, it is about the people, and you got to want to help people and help them grow and learn and develop. And if that's not in you, then pick a different career path for yourself.
Yes. Yes.
And
Or
again, it's
you
not a
get
bad thing either. I want to make sure people understand that, I don't look down on people that don't want to do it. In fact, I appreciate people who recognize they don't want to do that, right? Because there's so many
absolutely.
people in management, and the only reason they're there is they saw the prestige and the title and more money, but
Yes.
they really don't want the responsibilities that come with it.
Yes. You're absolutely right about that. And then sometimes, what I've saw is egos.
Yep.
That's a huge, huge issue.
Yeah. Well, that's why I said they want the prestige of the title. I want to be the manager or whatever that title happens to be. And the title doesn't make you a manager.
No, it does not. And
No.
leadership, CEO,
Yeah.
you've got to wear the shoes.
Yep. Yeah. I'll just give you another one too. Like example, we work a lot in construction. So recently we helped one of our clients actually up in Canada. They're a roofing company and they were hiring laborers, right? And they had a lot of turnover, which is similar entry level thing to the retail we talked about, right? And I said, well, one of the things you got to recognize, is that these you are approaching them as, below, whatever your normal criteria is for a real employee, right? Just again, the attitude that they take. So I
Mhm.
said, if you looked at, every one of those laborers as potentially, your next project manager, a couple of years down the road and treated them that way and presented the role to them that, hey, this is just a foot in the door, right? Once
Mhm.
you demonstrate you can do this, then we're going to give you more responsibility and give you a promotion. So, and it could just be like labor, you start off as a laborer one, and then once you demonstrate in the first 30, 60 days you can do what we need you to do, I'll give you a bump in pay and make you laborer two, right? Or senior laborer, right?
Yeah.
And then you got to have what's next after that. So it's a big part of it is really just about getting creative about how to give people that future and make sure that they can embrace it and own it to get there. So,
Yeah.
and that's what our system helps them do.
And I
So,
mean, it makes sense.
Yeah. Well, it makes dollars too. Because
True.
when we put the system in play, well, the other thing we did too is we said, and this can work too for a lot of different entry level roles, do working interviews. So, in other words, don't just interview them and hope they work out. But what we did with them, with the laborers, we said, look, we want you to come on the job for a day. I'm going to pay you the hourly rate. We're going to have a list of things that you need to do to demonstrate you can do the job successfully. But this is also for you, the candidate. You may not want to do that job. But since you've never done it, you have no idea. But by the end of the day, you'll have an idea what's involved, right? I'll have an idea if you can do it. And then if we decide, yes, you want the job, I want you to have the job, the probability of you succeeding just went up by about 50% or greater. And reality is this particular client, the first 90-day turnover for these people, prior to us implementing that, was like they were losing like 60, 70% of them.
Wow.
And when we implemented this, we had a 95% first 90-day retention rate. So so it makes a huge difference, right? And then think how much did that save the company on constantly hiring, and turning people over, and then how that affects the morale of the rest of the company when you have that churn. So other people start producing better too when you can hang on to people better.
Oh, yeah. It's motivational.
Yes.
And that's what you want. You want to motivate
Exactly.
at all costs. That's important.
Yeah.
I mean, what's that old saying? You get more honey with bees than vinegar.
Yeah. Yeah. But that kind of goes back to I said, you got to want to help people. If you're in
Yes,
that leadership role, you want to help people to learn, evolve, and grow. And that's what I get excited about when I see people learn and evolve and grow in their careers. There's nothing more set. Well, there's maybe a few things, but mostly that's at the top of the list.
absolutely. And at the end of the day, that's what we're here for.
Yep.
Support one another in their growth.
Yep.
It's, I mean, you can even look at it as a baby,
Mhm.
watching a baby grow and teaching them how to walk and teaching them how to, you know, the gratification just when you see your kid do their first step. You're
Right.
happier than they are.
Yes.
For sure. Well, like I really like your philosophy. I like what you're doing.
Thank
Uh and I mean, not only helping companies to make more money, it's helping them also to value people.
Yes. Yep. Well, and that's our vision statement for XP3 is to create a world where employees and organizations can both thrive simultaneously.
And that's the way it should be.
Yep.
That's the way it should be. So again, how do companies connect with you?
Yep. Again, go to the website, xp3talent.com. Send me an email at mike@xp3talent.com, or go order a copy of Hire, Train, Retain second edition on Amazon. And the first edition, there's a few copies lingering out there. Don't order the first one. Make sure it's the second edition. So,
Yes, yes, indeed. Wow, I really enjoyed this conversation.
well, thank you. I
This is
appreciate it.
really, really comfortable. Um, I can tell you're a people person.
Yeah, a little bit.
Just a little bit. And all of what your company does is critical to the success of a company.
Yes.
And those companies that are out there with that old mentality
Mm.
got to step it up.
Yep, yep. Well, I'll tell you this, and the forward of my book was written by now a friend, a guy named Brian Gottlieb, and Brian just sold his companies last year for 150 million. Um, and he was in the construction industry and around the residential side. And he said, "Yeah," he goes, "when I first got into business, he owned if you're familiar with Renewal by Anderson, the window company, he had
Mhm.
franchises, and he owned one of those. He goes, "Yeah, I tell people I was in the construction world. That's what I do." He goes, but then I realized about 3 or 4 years into it, he goes, we were really in the sales and marketing business because it was all about how do I get new clients and close them. He goes, the product became irrelevant, or the service that we were, delivering. He goes, if we didn't have the leads or the ability to close those leads. We doesn't matter what products or services. He goes, so then I proudly boasted that we were a sales and marketing company that just happened to sell construction services. He goes, but my real success did not come until I realized we were in the training and coaching business. He goes,
Mm.
then everything else was irrelevant, and that was the focus. And he goes, that's when my growth, went from this to that,
Yeah.
and then ended up him, like I said, resulting in him selling his companies for 150 million last year. So he actually wrote the forward to my book and stuff, and talks about how, the importance of that, and that's where I would encourage people to embrace that. If you really want to grow successfully and profitably, unless you're just a solo entrepreneur doing some independent thing, right? If you're really trying to build a company around people, you're in the training and coaching business.
You ain't never lied. You're absolutely right because I mean, keeping people. I mean, not only are you in the coaching people, you got to keep yourself together.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. If you got to constantly learning, right?
Right.
It's like here I'm 60, almost 64, and I've learned probably more in the last 3 or 4 years than I have the rest of my life. And I learned that from a colleague years ago, when I was facilitating CEO groups. One of the guys I did worked with, he at the time I think he was 95 or six and still working full time, coaching other CEOs. And then his wife was, I think he said at the time, was like 92, and they both played double tennis twice a week in their 90s, right, and working. And I was like, okay, what's your secret? He said, as long as you're learning, you're green and growing. The minute you stop learning, you are brown and rotting. I was like,
That is so true. I'm gonna take that one.
yeah. And that stuck with me. And I was like, okay. Well, and I'll leave you this one too. So to help people out for your listeners, when you're hiring, if you want to do one thing right now to make better hires, when you're hiring, focus on, is this person smart enough to learn what we're going to teach them about our company process systems? So are they smart enough to absorb? And then the second piece is even more important, which is, are they coachable? Which is
Mm,
different than being smart, right? You can be the smartest person in the world, but if you're a know-it-all, I can't teach you anything.
right.
So
Exactly.
if you can focus on those two things, right, you will find you will hire much better people who will be able to learn and become productive a lot faster.
Yes. Gotta be coachable.
Yes.
Gotta be. All righty, Mike. I could go on and on with you. I'm having a great time. So I really thank you for taking time out of your day, and audience, I thank you too. And one more time, like, how does companies connect with you?
Yep. Xp3Talent.com, the website. Mike at xp3talent.com, my email address. Reach out directly, or get the book Hire, Train, Retain, second edition, at amazon.com.
All righty now. So thank you so much. I really appreciate this time with you and looking forward to more.
Well, thank you, Ada. My pleasure.
Absolutely.